Hey everyone, how are you all doing today? I hope you're surrounded by peace and good health. Before we dive in, I want you to picture this. For 7 long years, I poured my heart, my savings, and my entire life into building my boyfriend's tech startup. I coded every feature, funded every expense, and sacrificed my own dreams. Then came the day his company went public, a $500 million valuation. But instead of gratitude, I received divorce papers at the IPO after-party. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're just a coder, Victoria. I need a CEO wife. Your GitHub profile embarrasses me." I vanished that night without a trace. 18 months later, when his empire crumbled and he needed $20 million to avoid prison, guess who was the only person who could save him? What happened next will restore your faith in karma. But before we get into this incredible story, please hit that like button and subscribe to Twisted MNT Stories. And as always, drop your name, city, and the word present in the comments so I know where you're watching from. Thank you all so much for being here. Now, let's dive in. That April morning in 2015, I remember standing in our cramped studio apartment in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I was 25 years old, working 2 jobs as a software developer, one full-time at a mid-sized company during the day, another freelancing at night, and I was exhausted. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. My hair needed a trim I couldn't afford. But when I looked at Marcus Reed sleeping peacefully in our second-hand bed, I smiled. Because I believed in him. I believed in us. Marcus had this vision, you see. He wanted to revolutionize how small businesses manage their inventory. "It's going to change everything, Vic," he'd tell me with that infectious enthusiasm, his green eyes sparking with dreams. "Legacy systems are clunky and expensive. We're going to make it accessible, affordable, beautiful." I was a back-end developer with a talent for databases and API architecture. Marcus was a business graduate with charisma and a silver tongue but zero technical skills. Together, he said, we were unstoppable. So I became his technical co-founder in everything but name. I'd work my day job from 9 to 6, then come home and code for his startup from 7 until 2 in the morning. Weekends disappeared entirely. While my friends from college were traveling, dating, building their careers, I was hunched over my laptop debugging Marcus's dreams. I didn't mind. Love makes you do crazy things, doesn't it? The startup was called Inventory Flow. Marcus registered it under his name alone, just easier for legal purposes, he said, and I stupidly agreed. I built the entire back-end infrastructure. Every database schema, every API endpoint, every security protocol was my work. Marcus handled the business side, meeting investors, pitching to clients, networking at tech events. But here's the thing. Those investor meetings only happened because I'd work extra freelance gigs to pay for his designer suits, his networking dinner tabs, his co-working space membership. In our second year, Marcus needed $30,000 to rent office space and hire our first sales guy. I sold my late father's vintage motorcycle, the only thing of value I'd inherited when he passed. That motorcycle was my connection to my dad, who taught me to code when I was 10 years old. But Marcus said, "Baby, this is our future. Your dad would want you to invest in us." So I sold it and handed him the cash. Year 3, we needed another $50,000 for marketing. I took out a personal loan, maxing out my credit. Marcus promised to pay me back when we hit our first $1 million in revenue. Year 4, $70,000 more for a major infrastructure upgrade. I cashed out my entire $401k retirement fund, paying the early withdrawal penalties. My hands were the ones typing the code at 3 in the morning. My money was funding every expansion, but Marcus was the face of the company. He was the CEO. I was just there. His mother, Claudia Reed, never hid her disdain for me. She lived in Pacific Heights in an old money mansion, the kind with actual marble columns. Whenever Marcus brought me to family dinners, she'd look at my Target clearance clothes and secondhand laptop bag with this thin smile. "Marcus, dear," she'd say in that sugary voice, "when you're successful, you'll need to upgrade to a more suitable partner. Someone from our circles, someone with an MBA from Stanford. Not just technical skills." She'd pause on those last 2 words like they were distasteful. Marcus would just laugh it off. Mom, stop! Vic's brilliant, but he never defended me with any real conviction. By year 7, I'd invested over $300,000 of my own money into inventory flow, everything I had earned, borrowed, and scraped together. The company was finally taking off. We had real clients, real revenue, and venture capital firms circling. Marcus started dressing differently. $5,000 suits replaced the affordable ones I'd bought him. He hired an executive coach. He joined an exclusive business club in Soma, and he started coming home later and later, his collar smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. I wasn't stupid. I noticed. But I was also terrified of losing everything I'd built. So I did something Marcus didn't know about. Every single line of code I wrote, I backed up to my personal GitHub repository. Every architecture decision, every database schema, every algorithm, I documented it all with timestamps and my personal credentials. My college roommate, Elena Patel, was now a tech lawyer. Over coffee one morning, I casually asked her about intellectual property rights in startups. "Victoria," she said carefully, "if you wrote the code, you own it, even if the company is in his name, especially if you can prove authorship." I filed that information away. Then came the IPO. March 2022. Inventory Flow went public at a $500 million valuation. The night before, Marcus held me in our apartment. We'd finally upgraded to a one-bedroom in Soma, and he said, "None of this would have happened without you, Vic. I love you." I believed him. God help me. I believed him. The IPO day was chaos. Photographers, journalists, investors in $1,000 watches and Italian shoes. Marcus stood on the trading floor, beaming as the opening bell rang. I stood in the back of the gallery in my only professional dress, the navy one I'd worn to every pitch meeting for 7 years. When the stock price stabilized at $47 per share, Marcus's 15% stake was suddenly worth $75 million. $75 million. From my code, from my $300,000 in savings, from my 7 years of 18-hour days. That evening, Marcus threw an after-party at a rooftop bar overlooking the Bay Bridge. The kind of place where cocktails cost $35. I felt completely out of place among the investors' wives in their Gucci dresses and Cartier jewelry. Claudia was there, holding court in a circle of old-money socialites, shooting me looks that said I didn't belong. Marcus worked the room like the born salesman he was, shaking hands, making promises, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Around 10 o'clock, he found me standing alone by the railing, looking out at the glittering city. "Vic, we need to talk," he said. His voice was different, cold. I turned around, and my stomach dropped. He was holding a brown envelope. "What's that?" I asked. My voice came out small. He handed it to me. Inside were divorce papers, petition for dissolution of marriage. We weren't even married, but we'd been together for 9 years. This was a separation agreement, and it was brutal. No equity in the company, no claim to the intellectual property, nothing. "Marcus, what is this?" I whispered. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the papers. He sighed like I was being difficult. "Look, Vic, you're a good person. But let's be honest. You're a coder. That's great. That's useful. But I'm a CEO now. I'm going to be meeting with Fortune 500 executives, attending galas, speaking at conferences. I need someone beside me who fits that world." He gestured vaguely at the party around us. "Someone with an MBA, someone from the right family, someone who can talk to these people. Someone like—" He nodded toward a woman across the bar, tall and polished in a white cocktail dress. "Like Isabel. Isabel Thornton, daughter of a venture capital managing partner, Stanford MBA. A woman who'd never written a line of code in her life but who understood business strategy. You're breaking up with me for her?" My voice cracked. "After 7 years? After everything you what?" Marcus snapped. "Vic, let's not pretend here. Yes, you helped with the technical stuff, but I built this company. I got the funding. I closed the deals. I made this happen. You were support staff. Support staff." Those words detonated something in my chest. The tears I'd been holding back started to fall. "I wrote every line of code, Marcus. I funded this company with my inheritance, my savings, my retirement. And I'm grateful. he interrupted, which is why I'm offering you a severance package. $50,000. That's more than generous considering you were never formally an employee. You can take it and move on. Start fresh. $50,000. For 7 years of my life, for $300,000 of my money, for the code that was currently generating millions in revenue. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a breaking, it was a transformation. The tears stopped immediately. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and for the first time in 7 years, I saw him clearly. He wasn't a dreamer, he was a user, a parasite, and I had let him feed off me because I'd confused his ambition with love. No, I said quietly. What? He looked genuinely confused, as if no one had ever refused him anything. I said no. I'm not signing this. You want a divorce? Fine, but I'm going to get what's mine. I pulled out my phone and dialed Elena's number. She answered on the second ring. Elena, it's Victoria. I need you to file that lawsuit we discussed. Tonight. All of it. Marcus's face went pale. What lawsuit? Vic, don't be stupid. You have no legal ground. I have every legal ground, I said, and my voice was steady now, cold as steel. Every line of code in inventory flow has my digital signature in the Git commits. Every architecture decision is documented in my personal repository with timestamps. I can prove I wrote 70% of your billion-dollar product, and I can prove you knew it. Those investor pitch decks you sent? The ones I wrote for you? I have the original drafts in my email with my authorship metadata intact. I watched the color drain from his face. In California, intellectual property created during a partnership can be claimed by the creator, and I had the receipts, 7 years' worth. You wouldn't, he breathed. Try me. I walked out of that rooftop bar with my head high, leaving Marcus standing frozen among his investors and his new girlfriend and his mother, who was just starting to realize the golden goose might have legal problems. I didn't go back to our apartment. I went straight to Elena's office. We worked through the night. By dawn, we had filed a lawsuit. Victoria Chen v. Inventory Flow Incorporated and Marcus Reed. Intellectual property theft, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. We were claiming 70% ownership of the codebase and seeking $50 million in damages. The next 18 months were hell and heaven simultaneously. The lawsuit became headline news in the tech world. Scorned developer sues ex-boyfriend CEO for $50M. Inventory flow IPO in jeopardy as code ownership disputed. Marcus fought dirty. He claimed I was a disgruntled ex trying to extort him. His lawyers argued I'd been adequately compensated through our living arrangement. Claudia went on a PR campaign, telling anyone who'd listen that I was bitter and vindictive. But here's what they couldn't argue against: my Git commit history. In software development, every code change is logged with a timestamp and author. I had 7 years of commits, over 50,000 individual contributions, all tagged with my credentials. Marcus had maybe 200, all in the first year, all basic HTML changes. A forensic code analysis confirmed what I'd been saying. I'd written 73% of the inventory flow platform. During the discovery phase of the lawsuit, we uncovered something even Marcus's lawyers couldn't spin. Emails from Marcus to investors, where he explicitly said, "My technical co-founder Victoria Chen built our entire back-end infrastructure." Messages to his executive coach where he wrote, "I don't understand the technical side, that's all Vic's domain." He'd admitted it. In writing. His own words destroyed his case. I'll never forget the moment his lead lawyer called Elena and said, "We'd like to discuss settlement terms." But I didn't just sit around during those 18 months waiting for legal victory. I disappeared. I let Marcus and his cronies think I was hiding in shame. The truth? I was building. You see, during all those years coding for Marcus, I'd identified a major problem in the market: code quality. Startups were rushing products to market with buggy, insecure code because proper code review was expensive and time-consuming. What if AI could automate the process? I'd been tinkering with a machine learning model for years as a side project. Now I had time and motivation to finish it. I rented a tiny studio in Oakland, away from the San Francisco tech scene, and I coded like a woman possessed, 16-hour days. My AI tool, which I called Code Guardian, analyzed source code for security vulnerabilities, performance issues, and best practice violations. It was 10 times faster than human reviewers and caught things humans missed. I poured my anger into every algorithm. Every time I wanted to cry, I coded instead. Elena introduced me to her network. I started beta testing Code Guardian with small startups who were tired of expensive consultants. The response was incredible. Within 6 months, I had 50 paying customers. Within a year, I had 200. Major tech companies started inquiring. Then came the acquisition offer. Cloud Tech Solutions, one of the major cloud computing platforms, saw what I'd built. They needed automated code review for their millions of customers who deployed code on their platform. In December 2023, they offered me $15 million for Code Guardian. $15 million. For a tool I'd built alone in an Oakland studio while Marcus was losing his mind in court. I took the deal. But I didn't stop there. I took that $15 million and started a venture capital fund, Chen Ventures. My focus was exclusively on female founders and tech women who were the actual builders but got sidelined by charismatic male partners, women who needed someone who understood their worth. Within 6 months, I'd invested in 20 startups, and my portfolio was valued at over $50 million. Meanwhile, Marcus's world was crumbling. The lawsuit wasn't his only problem. During discovery, news leaked that Inventory Flow's core technology was disputed intellectual property. Investors panicked. No one wants to own stock in a company that might lose its product in court. The stock price, which had peaked at $53 per share, started falling. First to $40, then $30, then $20. Marcus's $75 million stake was evaporating in real time. Big clients started quietly moving to competitors. Who wants to build their business on a platform that might get shut down by court order? Then came the patent issues. Inventory Flow had filed for several technology patents, all based on my code. During the lawsuit, those patents were frozen pending ownership resolution. Without patent protection, competitors swooped in. 3 rival companies launched similar products, and without the legal mode of patents, Inventory Flow couldn't stop them. Revenue dropped 40% in 1 quarter. The board of directors, those same smooth-talking investors who'd celebrated Marcus at the IPO party, started asking hard questions. How did this happen? Why don't we own clear title to our technology? Who did the due diligence on code ownership? Marcus had no good answers. By month 16 of the lawsuit, Inventory Flow's stock had crashed to $8 per share. Marcus's stake was now worth about $8 million, still wealthy by normal standards, but not CEO of a unicorn wealthy. His penthouse apartment in Millennium Tower went on the market. The Tesla was traded for a Honda. Isabel Thornton, his Stanford MBA girlfriend, quietly started dating a different CEO. Claudia stopped returning his calls. A cash-poor son was apparently less interesting than a rich one. Then came the settlement conference. March 2024, 18 months after that rooftop bar confrontation. We sat in a conference room in a downtown law office, Marcus and his legal team on one side, me and Elena on the other. Marcus looked terrible. He'd aged 5 years. His expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. The arrogance was gone, replaced by desperation. The mediator laid out the situation. I had an airtight case for intellectual property ownership. If we went to trial, I'd likely win 70% of the company plus damages. Inventory Flow would be forced into bankruptcy trying to pay me. Marcus would be personally liable for fraud damages. Or, the mediator suggested, we could settle. Marcus's lawyer spoke first. His voice was resigned. My client is prepared to offer Miss Chen, Elena corrected icily. Miss Chen, excuse me. My client offers $10 million to settle all claims and relinquish any ownership disputes. I didn't even look at Marcus. I looked at Elena. She nodded slightly, our prearranged signal that it was my turn. I have a counterproposal, I said. My voice was calm. These 18 months had burned away all emotion except cold clarity. I slid a document across the table. Chen Ventures will acquire 90% of Inventory Flow at current market valuation, approximately $72 million. Marcus retains 10% equity, but steps down as CEO. The company will be restructured and rebranded, All existing debts will be paid, and Marcus will sign a 10-year employment contract as Chief Technology Officer. The room went silent. CTO. The technical role. The role he'd always dismissed as support staff. "I'm not a coder," Marcus finally said. His voice was hollow. "I know," I replied. "But you're going to learn. Part of your employment contract includes mandatory technical training. You'll report to our actual CTO. I've already hired her. She's brilliant, and you'll do the work you always claimed was beneath you. You'll code features, fix bugs, write documentation. Your salary will be $80,000 a year," he gasped. "80,000? I was making 500,000. You were making 500,000, running a company built on stolen code," I said sharply. "Now you'll make an honest living doing honest work. Or you can refuse. I'll win the lawsuit. You'll owe me $50 million in damages you don't have, and you'll spend the next decade in bankruptcy fighting off creditors. Your choice." Marcus looked at his lawyers. They both nodded grimly. He had no leverage. Inventory flow was dying. The stock was worthless. His personal assets were gone. I was offering him a lifeboat, even if it came with terms that destroyed his ego. "Where?" he whispered. "Where what? Where would I work?" I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Our technical team is distributed. You'll work from our satellite office. It's in Juneau, Alaska." "Alaska?" His voice cracked. "But Alaska," I repeated firmly. "Low cost of living, minimal distractions. Perfect for learning to code. You'll have a studio apartment included in your compensation package. Very modest, much like the studio in the Tenderloin where I lived while building your company." The terms were brutal, and we both knew it. 10 years of his life, doing work he'd always looked down on, in a remote location far from the San Francisco tech scene he loved, for a salary that wouldn't support his old lifestyle. But the alternative was complete destruction. At least this way he'd have income, health insurance, and that 10% equity stake. If Chen Ventures successfully turned around inventory flow and I intended to his 10%, might actually be worth something someday. He signed. His hand shook as he put pen to paper, but he signed. Every page, every clause. 3 months later, I stood in the lobby of our new headquarters, a beautiful office space in the financial district with that same view of the Bay Bridge. But this time, I was the one who belonged here. My company. My rules. The rebranding was complete. Inventory flow was now Velocity Systems. The technical debt Marcus had ignored for years was being fixed. The security vulnerabilities I'd warned him about were being patched. And our client base was growing again. I hired 30 new developers, 23 of them were women, all from non-traditional backgrounds, all hungry to prove themselves. My CTO was a brilliant engineer named Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, who'd been overlooked for promotions for 15 years at her old company because she wasn't leadership material. Together, we rebuilt the platform properly. I also restructured Chen Ventures. My fund now managed over $200 million in assets, invested in 42 companies, all with female technical founders. We required all companies in our portfolio to have clear IP ownership documentation and fair equity splits. I wasn't going to let what happened to me happen to anyone else. Marcus started his employment in Juneau in June 2024. I received weekly reports from the CTO he reported to. He was struggling. Learning to code in your late 30s when you've spent a decade avoiding it is humiliating. His first pull request, a simple bug fix, had 17 errors and had to be rejected. The second try had 12 errors. He was learning what I'd known all along. This work is hard. It takes dedication. It takes humility. 6 months into his employment, I flew to Juneau to inspect our satellite office. It was a small but functional space above a coffee shop, with views of the mountains. Marcus was at his desk when I walked in, staring at his screen with the frustrated concentration of a beginner. He looked up and saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he stood. "Victoria," he said quietly. "Marcus." I kept my voice neutral. "How's the work?" "It's harder than I thought. Coding. All of it." He gestured at his screen where a Python tutorial was open. "I'm trying to understand recursive functions and I never appreciated what you did. How hard this is. How much skill it takes." I walked to the window, looking out at the Alaskan wilderness. You told me I was just a coder, that I was support staff, that my GitHub profile embarrassed you. I know. I was an idiot. I was arrogant and stupid, and I turned to face him. You were a thief, Marcus. You stole my work and my money and 7 years of my life. And when I had nothing left to give, you threw me away for someone better. He flinched. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I studied him. The fancy suits were gone. He wore a hoodie and jeans, like any junior developer. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something I'd never seen in him before: humility. You have 9.5 years left on your contract, I said. If you complete it successfully, if you genuinely learn the skills and contribute meaningfully to the team, I'll consider renegotiating your equity stake. Maybe up to 15%. Maybe. His eyes widened. Really? Maybe, I repeated. That's up to you. But here's the thing, Marcus. Code is power. The person who can build is the person who controls everything. You forgot that. Don't forget it again. I walked toward the door, then paused. By the way, Velocity Systems was just valued at $400 million. Your 10% is worth $40 million on paper. If you'd treated me with respect 7 years ago, you'd have $75 million in cash and a company worth $500 million. Instead, you have $80,000 a year and a contract you can't escape. That's what arrogance costs. I left him there in that small office in Alaska, staring at his computer screen, finally understanding that the woman he'd called just a coder was the reason he'd ever had anything at all. Today, I'm 62 years old. Velocity Systems is valued at over $1 billion. Chen Ventures manages $500 million in assets and has helped launch 93 companies run by women. 18 of them have exited successfully, making their founders wealthy. Marcus is still in Juneau. He's actually become a decent programmer, not great, but competent. He's in year 3 of his contract. Isabel Thornton married a different tech CEO. They divorced after 2 years. Claudia sends me Christmas cards now, apologizing for how she treated me. I don't respond. The lesson I learned? Never let anyone convince you that your contribution is less valuable than theirs just because their name is on the door. Never sacrifice everything for someone who wouldn't sacrifice anything for you. And most importantly, protect your work. Document everything. Own your code. Own your worth. Because in this world, people will take everything you give them and still ask for more. The moment you realize you're the one with the power, the real power, the ability to create is the moment you take control of your life. Marcus said I wasn't on his level. He was right. I wasn't on his level. I was so far above it that he couldn't even see me from where he stood. Did you enjoy the story? Which city are you listening from? Drop it in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please send a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this to life. I'm looking forward to reading your thoughts. On your screen, you'll see 2 more incredible stories that I highly recommend. And there's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story. See you in the next one. With love and respect.